So, what are the special days in Lent? What do they mean? And why would we bother celebrating them? Hi, everyone. My name is Greg Simpson. I'm the minister at St. Andrew's United Church. And as you might know, Lent is a period of time celebrated by lots of different Christians. It's the 40 days that lead up to Easter. No, wait. I've already lied to you. It's actually 46 days, but we do some kind of funky math and we call it 40 because each of the Sundays we don't count. I'll get to that later. What I do want to talk about today, though, is the days themselves, the special days. We've got Shrove Tuesday, Ash Wednesday, Palm Sunday, Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, Easter Sunday. We've got so many different things. And sometimes we Christians use words that we know and don't let other people in on the secret. So I want to unpack and maybe dispel some of the mystery around some of these words. Shrove Tuesday. This year, 2023, that's going to happen on February 21st. So Shrove Tuesday is also known as Pancake Tuesday. It was a time before Lent, which is getting ready for Easter. And one of the parts of Lent is often some sort of fasting or giving up. The idea was to get all of the sugar and flour and things that were deemed as luxuries out of the house. So we're going to bake up all of the pancakes and we're going to eat them all up. And then for the 40 days of Lent, we're going to step back, be a little introspective, and we're going to fast from some of those luxuries. So that's where Pancake Tuesday comes from. Lots of you, if you're not a particularly Christian person, you've bumped into Pancake Tuesday and might not have even known that it had anything to do with church. So now you know. Now, Lent starts on Ash Wednesday. This year, in 2023, that's going to land on February the 22nd. Now, lots of you have probably encountered Ash Wednesday in your own way. Some of you have maybe gone to church in the evening, and maybe you've had a quiet, contemplative service. And at some point in that service, somebody might have put ashes on your forehead, drawn on your forehead the sign of a cross with ashes. And that's very traditional. That goes back many, many years. We go back to the Old Testament. The ashes and sackcloth were signs of mourning, grieving what has gone before. And part of our Easter discovery, our Easter journey is Good Friday, when we're going to talk about the day that Jesus died. And so Ash Wednesday puts us in the right mindset to think about that. And so we go to worship, we spend a little bit of time with some other people, we talk about some of the harder parts of our Easter and Lenten experience, and we're marked with the sign of the cross in ashes. Now, different traditions do this in different ways. What I've described probably sits more closely with if you grew up in a Catholic church or perhaps Anglican. I know some of the Orthodox churches. Not as many Protestant churches celebrate that, but it's kind of up to different denominations to celebrate that in the ways that they want to. So Ash Wednesday is our beginning of Lent, and then we have each Sunday is sort of like a little mini Easter. Maybe taking some time to be reflective during the week. We might be fasting from something. People have talked about giving up chocolate for Lent or giving up coffee for Lent. Some other people choose to take on something for Lent. Maybe they will do more self-reflective time. They'll do a daily devotional, that sort of thing. And if you want to do a daily devotional, we're actually going to be doing that right here on YouTube, starting on the 22nd of February. So I'll put a link up there somewhere so that you can follow that when you get there. That's what Lent is about, is intentional time, getting a little bit deeper into our faith, deeper into our relationship with God. We're going to explore what it means to us to know that Jesus died on our behalf, what it means to us to talk about his death on Good Friday and then his resurrection on Easter. So those are sort of the work that we do. Through the week, we're maybe a little bit quieter and more contemplative. And then on the Sundays of Lent, we do a little more celebration. It's a moment to sort of step out of our fasting and recognize that even in the midst of mourning, even in the midst of grief, life goes on. And then we get to Palm Sunday, which this year is going to be April the 2nd. And Palm Sunday celebrates a specific event, Jesus coming into Jerusalem. on a donkey or on a young colt. Different gospels describe it different ways. But this is a moment where Jesus, we name it as the triumphal entry. Jesus is entering Jerusalem. There are some possible traditions that suggest there was another parade going on at the same time on the other side of Jerusalem, more of a political or a military parade. And so certainly the idea of Jesus, as the people were calling him the King of the Jews, him arriving in Jerusalem on a donkey or a colt, something very lowly, there was a lot of imagery to that. It was quite intentional. So that's Palm Sunday, that we celebrate that triumphal entry where people shouted hosannas and they laid down palm branches and he rode into Jerusalem. And then only a few days later, on Maundy Thursday, April 6th this year, we talk about the Last Supper and we sit together and we recognize that that was the day that the disciples sat down with Jesus and they had their last meal together. Different traditions have different names for this. We usually use the word Last Supper, or we'll sometimes call it communion, but then some other traditions call it Eucharist, or maybe even the love meal or the Holy Feast. Lots of different descriptions, and they just come from those different traditions and the way people are interpreting what the Gospels wrote about that particular moment in time. But that's what Maundy Thursday is. And some traditions also include a couple of other parts. One of them can be a washing of feet, because that's one of the things that the Gospels write that Jesus did on that day, is he washed his disciples' feet. And in that process, displayed to them his humility and invited them, very straightforwardly invited them to approach the rest of the world with an attitude of humility and servitude. A hard thing to do for us as Christians, to recognize that Jesus himself, the one we call our leader and our Messiah, he served others in what to their thinking was one of the most lowly and humble of ways. The day after that is Good Friday, the day that we talk about the death of Jesus on the cross. I'm not sure if you've read through all of the different Gospels and the way that they take the Passion of Christ, the last week of Jesus' life here on earth. It's really hard. It's very human, and we're reading about a person's death. These are very, very difficult stories to read. And so we can't just kind of gloss over them and smooth them and say, oh yeah, this is just what happened. We need to sit with it. Be aware of how it impacts us. Be aware of how it affects us. So that's what Good Friday does for us. It gives us a chance to sit in the grief, sit in the horror, sit in these difficult stories. Very often, Good Friday services are quite a somber affair. Some churches will cover the entire church in black cloth, like the inside parts will be all covered in black, so it's very dark and foreboding. Very often, the music choices will be in minor keys, or maybe there will be no music whatsoever. Different traditions handle this different ways, but Good Friday is a time of grief, of crying, of sadness, of depression. It's a hard time. Some traditions celebrate Easter Vigil on the Saturday. Some people will stay up late at night. There are a lot of different traditions around that. I didn't grow up Catholic, and that's more within Catholic and Orthodox traditions. So I'm not going to speak specifically to them because I don't know them as well. But the Saturday of Easter weekend is very, very important for some traditions. And then we have Easter Sunday morning. And there's actually a couple of different things I want to talk about. One really common tradition is an Easter sunrise service. Easter is the day we celebrate the resurrection of Christ, that he battled death and came out the victor, that he rose from the dead, that he's available for you and I to have a relationship with today. And we're going to celebrate that in lots of different ways. Different churches do it different ways, and it's very, very exciting. There's a lot of joy. We sing an awful lot of hallelujahs on Easter Sunday. Some people do it first thing in the morning when the sun is rising. At a church I used to serve, we were close enough to a lake that we were able to stand on the beach and watch the sunrise over the lake. It was such a beautiful and pastoral and often quite cold moment. And then there are other churches that celebrate with very much pomp and circumstance during their regular worship time. Lots of churches celebrate baptisms. Communion is sometimes part of it. So many big celebratory things happen on Easter Sunday, the day that we recognize, the day that we celebrate that Jesus was resurrected, that he rose from the dead. So those are the bits and pieces. Those are the special days within the Lenten season. I wonder, now I've touched on the ones that I know and that I've got familiarity with. Do you know of some others? If you do, please put them in the comments below. I just love exploring what other traditions, other denominations, other faiths do around these special times. I want to also recognize that our Christian traditions draw very, very heavily from the Jewish traditions, and Passover is a timing that matches right up with the Easter celebrations as well. And so lots of times there are Christian churches that draw from the Passover feast. It's great for us to remember that these traditions that we are celebrating draw on other faiths and other traditions as well. So if you know more about those, I invite you to share them in the comments. It'd be fantastic, because then we can all learn about them together. If you have any questions at all about Lent, I invite you to reach out. I would love to share. I'd love to say more, maybe even make another video like this one about some particular piece. And if you're interested in joining us for our Lenten devotional journey, we'll be posting videos at 8 o'clock every morning, straight through from there until Easter. It will be some scripture, a little bit of reflection, and some prayer time, probably about 4 or 5 minutes each, for us to just sit together with the words of scripture, how we might work through our Lenten journey together. Thank you so much for joining me today. I love you all very much, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.